Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll just wait for another 2 minutes so that if somebody is missed on or somebody's just waiting on the line, we'll just let them join in. And within 2 minutes, we'll start the session. To all those who've joined us from across the world, thank you so much for joining us. We'll just, like mentioned earlier, we'll just wait for another minute and then we'll soon start the session. We have a lot to cover today. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for joining us. We'll soon start the session. Let's not wait further, then let's go ahead and start the session. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all those who joined us from across the world. And once again, thank you for joining us in today's session. I am your host, Anish Krishnan, Head of Marketing at QKS Group. And in today's session is about managing risk as automation scales, why visibility alone is no longer enough. To dig deep, we have our experts on this subject. I welcome Pranjal Singh, Principal Analyst at QKS Group. Along with him, we have Kunal Pakle, who's also a Principal Analyst here at QKS Group. They will be taking us through the evolution, the architectural ingredients, the changing risk profiles, and of course, regarding the governance playbook. With that, once again, I thank everybody for joining us. And again, I just want to remind you all that if you have any Q&A or if you have any questions that needs to be answered, please feel free to drop the questions in the section below. And towards the end of the session, we'll be definitely answering those. And with that, I hand it over to Pranjal. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much, Anish, and I welcome all for this webinar. So, before we get into the slides, so let me just set some context here for everyone. Like most organizations today are not new to automation. So, like you have automated processes and you have scaled your bots, you have connected systems. So, in many cases, automation is actually working quite well. But when we talk to like operations team, BPM leaders, head of digital transformation, or the chief digital officer, and various CXOs. So, like one thing, like the one theme is consistently coming up. Like they are always saying that despite all this automation, like risk feel harder to manage than it used to. So, like there are incidents which feel more complex and fixes they don't always stick, and when something goes wrong, so it's not always clear like where it is started and who owns that problem or the bottleneck. So that's really what this session is all about. So this is not automation failure, but how automation changes the nature of risk once it scales.
And yes, and that's why the second part of this title matters so much. That we are not saying why the visibility matters so much. We are not saying that why visibility is bad. In fact, most enterprises today have very strong visibility. They have dashboard, they have alerts, they have the reports, even the report generated by the generative AI right now, and even the real-time monitoring. The issue is that the visibility explains what happens after the execution. It doesn't help you control how execution behaves before the things go wrong. So today we are going to walk you through why that happens, what kind of risks show up at a scale, and why BPM has to evolve from automating processes to governing execution.
So,
Anish,
yes. So in this, like how this problem evolves. So earlier we have a like traditional view. So like earlier, like the risk management was largely reactive. Like if something failed or someone raised a ticket, so teams look at various event logs or the normal logs like dashboards and a report, and then they fix the issue. So that approach worked when automation was limited, and like that at that time, like automation was not very complex, and when processes were fairly like it's in a linear path, then they don't have any spaghetti diagram and other things. But and they are in the single system and within the team.
And adding to that, but today, as we talk about, automation runs continuously. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop for anything. It spans system, teams, vendors, and sometimes even regions. And decisions are being made simultaneously as the automation runs and automatically without any human in the loop. And in that world, waiting for failure to show up in a dashboard is often too late. And by the time you see it, the impact may have already spread throughout the entire system. And that's why the mandate shifts, just from the passively observing to what we call as an active control panel, governing execution while it is happening. So I'll just break it down for you guys. So a simple way to think about it is earlier we said uh, we saw a bot fail 2 hours ago, but now the paradigm has to shift, and now we have to say we validated this decision before it was ever executed, and that's a very different mindset around risk. So Anish, can you move to the next slide? Okay, have we moved to the next slide?
Yes.
Yeah.
So now when we say active control, it can sound abstract. So let's break it down. We consistently see three ingredients in organization that used to manage automation risk well. The first is orchestration. It is something that coordinates tasks, systems, humans, and even the AI agents into single execution flow. The second I'll talk about is the decision governance. And this is about recognizing that the rules, threshold, models, those are not just configurations. They are decisions that directly affect outcomes, customers, and compliance. So they need ownership, they need versioning, they need validation, and also the ability to roll back when the things go wrong. And the next would be the process intelligence, Pranjal.
So I think these three are the important ingredients, but out of these three, process intelligence will be the, like I can say, the most important one, because like if you don't understand your processes, so what you can automate, and like where is automation is going on, you don't have the understanding about the same. So process intelligence is like more about you have the understanding of your processes, and which includes task mining as well. So you have like the granular analysis about everything from like task automation to process automation and process mining as well. So and even like in process intelligence we get a lot of understanding about how the actual processes are running, and there where there is conformance, how much deviation is there. So we get all the understanding in process intelligence. And even like 5 years ago, like most of the BPM vendors like realized that like the process mining is the key for like the successful automation, like to provide end-to-end automation. Yeah, so I think we can move to the next slide, Anish. Yeah. So in this, we are like talking about changing the risk profile. So this slide is very critical because it explains why risk feel different today. So as automation scales, risk doesn't increases, so it changes its shape. So earlier, like risk was about uptime, is the system running or not, or like the simple automation things. But now the automation is very complex. So there is hyper automation. All the system is connected, all the platform tools, everything is connected. So when all this thing will scale up, so obviously risk will all obviously risk increases. Kunal, do you want to add something?
So today, how we interpret risk is entirely different. You know, two systems can be both up and running perfectly, but they interpret a status, a field, or a rule slightly different from each other. And that's a difference. Doesn't always show up immediately. It show up downstream, and that's why we say risk now live in semantics and not just in the uptime. So this is where the decision choreography become very important, and someone has to own decisions end to end, and what data they use, how they behave under change, and what happens when assumption no longer hold. And before the changes reaches the production, those decisions need to be tested, and not just for the normal scenarios, but for the draft and edge cases as well. Anish, can you move to the next slide? Yes, governance as an engineering discipline. So this slide usually triggers an important realization. In a software engineering, we already know how to manage this. We don't deploy untested code. We use version control. We review changes, and we limit the blast radius to the minimum. And Brandon, would you like to add on that?
Yes. So like in earlier slide, we have seen like the drift detection. So what it does is like we have a set path, like what we have to automate. But in reality, when we do the automation and the actual results were very different what the organization or the CXOs are expecting out of that. So like we have to do the automation testing, automated testing, like the automated decisions, rules, threshold, models, and like many organizations still like rely on documents, email, and approval. So what we can say here is like governance must be engineered, not documented. So like version control for rules, automated test, peer review, control related, or controlled releases. All these things are important. And the next thing is like about the visibility. So instead of just telling what you broke, governance system warn you early, like when business outcomes start drifting, even if like for every bot, it still says okay, that is fine. But like that's how organization move from surprise to predictability. Like here comes the predictive analytics and all the AI things. Like before happening something in the system, the predictive analytics tell us like this will happen, and like this is where comes like things like simulation, what if analysis. So organizations can perform various simulation testing, what if analysis scenario, like they can test their automation in different scenarios, like where it will break. So all these things like cover where automation didn't break, and execution governance comes into the picture. I think Anish, we can move to the next slide. So let's talk about like where risk actually hides, where it is hidden. So like in day-to-day execution, the first place where it hides its handoffs. Like when data or control moves from one system to another. Like as we know, all systems like ERP, HRMS, and different systems, CRM, all are connected. So when data is moving from one place to another, and if there is like a very small difference can make a big impact on overall automation or on the system. So like small differences in interpretation can create big downstream issues. As I said, like if some data is missing, or like if the ETL is automated through AI and all, if and the AI system hallucinated a lot, so we'll not get the actual picture about the organization or the desired outcome an organization want to achieve. Kunal, do you want to add something here?
Yes, I'm going to talk about the exception plumbing, or what we say is the exception handling. These are the parts that don't generally happen often. So they are handled manual or by an entirely teams. And over the time, as teams migrate, the process changes, they become blind spots. And next in the process is the policy divergence, and we have seen this a lot in a lot of companies that policies diverge. The same rule is being implemented in the multiple places without a single source of truth. So execution governance addresses this by making a handoff very explicit, modeling exception, and the centralizing policies where possible. And then process mining validates whether this is actually happening in the production. Anish, you can move to the next slide. The next is the decision contract. The decision contract is, a very practical concept. For every important handoffs, team define inputs, outputs, and the error modes. There is no ambiguity as such. Pranjal, would you like to add in?
Yes. So, like decision logic lives one, like there is centralized logic, and like they are versioned and they are governed as well. So if like something like local logic is required, synchronization and conformance checks, uh, all other things ensure it doesn't drift silently. So exceptions are like treated seriously, and they tested, monitored, and owned by the system. And the next thing is error modes. So the in this like the execution governance, so it stop being theoretical and start influencing real execution. So all these things are not become a theory, but like in real time how these can be executed. So like Anish, we can move to the next slide. Yeah, so we have a case study, like we have taken an example for automated onboarding. So let's bring this to life when like on an onboarding example. So in most organization, onboarding involves document checks, risk scoring, compliance screening, and these are like obviously automated. Kunal, maybe you
Yes,
can.
and sorry. Once live, the execution is continuously compared against what was intended as a flow. And if that the divergence exceeds a defined threshold, alerts fire early, and the orchestration there enforces a certain guardrails and it routing to humans and when needed instead of processing blindly. So clearly there's a human in the loop here. And operationally speaking, this reduces compliance surprises. This reduces the yes, and establishes turnaround times and makes manual review very predictable. And when the change is needed, it is controlled and not rolled out everywhere at once. So operationally speaking, this clearly uh, minimizes the risk. Anish, if you move to the next slide, and we are talking here about the governance and the maturity roadmap. So I would like to iterate, governance just doesn't appear overnight. So most organizations start with discovery, understanding how process actually run. And Pranjal, would you like to add?
Yes. So as I talked earlier about the process intelligence, and this is the part this includes process mining. So like if you don't discover, if you don't know how your processes are working, so then how will you automate anything and how will you govern that particular thing? So the first phase start with the discovery. You will discover your processes, you will do the conformance, you will do the analytics, and like you do all the simulation and what if scenarios, like you will do all the testing. Then the second thing is there should be certain guardrails in that, because your like the ultimate goal which you wanted to achieve is like to automate your processes, and you want end-to-end automation in the best possible way. So there should be certain guardrails which where your processes, your or your bots or your automation didn't drift from the desired result. And the third thing is like the orchestration is the new big thing happening in the market. Like when we are interacting with the vendors, so they are saying orchestration is also important because we have a lot of bots, lot of automation, RPA, everything is there. So we have to identify which process has to be performed after that in a in a best optimal way, so we'll get the desired results. And the last thing is obviously monitoring is also important here. So if you don't monitor your processes, with the help of conformance and a drift detection, like there is as is process and to be process. So how the process is performing right now and what is the desired result we wanted to achieve in that. Kunal, do you have to add something here?
So yes, all of this figure out, help you figure out what are the key ingredients in your the governance maturity network, starting from discovery to discover, using the process planning and the decision mapping. All of this is really important. And one thing I like to iterate here is like why your decision model should be explicit, why your process mining should run individually, and why they should come all together, and why you should have a runtime guardrail so that AI just doesn't uh, go off path. You always have to have a certain constraint optimization in places. And we have talked about choreography, why it is important, since there are a lot of edge cases where agents orchestrate themselves. One figure out whether to lend the money or not. I'm just giving an example of loan origination and how everything takes place. And the other agent, like how will impact the business? Will it does it the applicant understand what the credit score should be, is there to not lend on the money or not. And finally you orchestrate all these things into the decision pipelines. And the versioning just help uh, to understand what all changes are happening and how the system is iterating itself to optimize better and to give out the maximum utility in place. And decision pipelines are important because there are a lot of stakeholders involved in a place, and all of them can take certain kinds of decisions. So it's really important that your decisions should be decentralized. And because if the decisions are not decentralized, what happens is you just keep on coming decision, and create a decision debt, which is not, in the long term, it is really harmful because it will directly impact your businesses very slowly without any. And lastly, conformance, the drift section, as we have mentioned, should always be proactive, prescriptive, and predictive. As the generative AI comes, we have digital twin of an organization. So what generative AI did here in this space, in the governance maturity roadmap, it just expanded your horizon for decisions. So instead of like proactively recommending decisions with the human in the loop, it just makes your job a lot easier. And with the drift dissection, as we know, like there are deviations in their performance checking. And if it is drift, the process is drifting, it just alert you way earlier before it impacts your utility. So this is it. And going to the next slide.
Kunal,
Yes.
yeah, do you have bring a very important point here about the Gen AI thing, and I think we should talk more about how we are seeing Gen AI being implemented and how users can be benefited by that implementation. So, according to me, like in this space of process intelligence, it's being used for creating the event logs and like where a user can also interact with in the system real time, like they can know, they just type a prompt like tell me where is the bottleneck, and the system will show them here is the bottleneck. And in like in some cases, like it's been too much in the development stage right now, like in some time it might show like how to rectify that error. Maybe Gen AI can like inform that decisions to the users as well. So do you want to add something here, like what in Gen AI thing, like what you are seeing?
When it comes to Gen AI, most of the organizations, what they are doing is they are uh, partnering with the third party AI systems. Like, most of the vendors are partnering uh, with the open AIs, and they use the pre-reasoning engine afterwards. So all of this are thinly wrapped around loop LLMs, which are actually glued into the legacy automation. And instead of using OpenAI's advanced reasoning model with the process reasoning engine, it basically addresses several structural failures that have plagued both the RPS system, as we have seen, and the lead readiness systems. So if the vendor is moving toward this, it is strategically a very sound moves. So if you want me to talk further about it, and let me break it down into the several pointers here. So first, it breaks, the brittleness of the step-driven automation. We have seen like traditional RPS systems, They encode workflow as a static sequences, and every deviation, and we have talked about like data drift, exception changes, it directly causes a failure or the manual intervention. And by separating reasoning, what should happens next from execution, it's how it happens securely. It allows workflows to adapt without re-engineering the entire process drafts. And what it also help you establish it infuses a certain governed autonomy. We are talking about the execution governance. So this is governed autonomy is also something we should talk about. Most agentic experiments or vendors who are experimenting with AI have previously mentioned like how edge agents are orchestrating themselves. They fail at scale because they optimize for independence rather than the control. So when you use the pre-reasoning engines or other kind of deterministic execution, it constrains LLM reasoning inside enterprise rules, permissions, and auditability. And this is very critical as enterprise don't need agents that are clever. They just need agents that are predictable under the governance systems. And third point I like to add, it is called as a reasoning to action. Instead of stopping at the insight, many AI deployments stall at the interpretation of it. Like classifying tickets, summarizing emails, suggesting next step. This architecture can go further by turning reasoning outputs directly into the orchestrated system actions across all departments, or not all departments, or the pilot departments that you're talking about, finance, HR, IT, and the CS platform. Because when you do that, you shortens the critical path, as you said, like time to value dramatically. Because insights are no longer wait for human or downstream automation handoffs, and it addresses where the regional agentic failure, collapses. Because persistent process context, the state, the history constraints, something LLMs alone cannot reliability maintain across the long-running enterprise workflows. So to avoid the common problem where agents forget what they're acting, and this leads to a coherent or risk decision over time. And why it matters in a broader automation landscape, because it implicitly acknowledges something important. Pure autonomy is not an end game for enterprise. Orchestration is, and by anchoring this reasoning or the governance to a process native uh, systems, system of actions, not task runners or AI call it. That's meaning an evolution, from automation to execution governance, and it draws a clear line between the uh, where the automation ends and where the enterprise grade governance we are talking about. And it is by control and not as an afterthought, I would say. Would you like to add?
Yes, Kunal. So like you have bring like two or three more important points here. Like first one is the agentic automation, the second one is the orchestration, and third one is the like the 100% autonomous organization. So I think you are correct. So why we are talking about like the execution governance and why there is risk? Because like most of the organization, like from the vendor side, they are moving towards agentic automation. So like there are agents who will perform their work, and there is no manual handling, and and there is no human in the loop. So that is why like the execution governance is important here in that perspective. And like from the user perspective, that is like the most critical thing, because they are automating everything. They have their own brain, like they have certain rules which on which they are trained, and but there should be some governance over that, like who will be executing the system, who will be governing the system if a bot failed, so who owns that? So I think that is the important point you bring out here. And obviously, like in our surveys and when interacting with users and industry experts and all, so we like it we have found that no organization want like the end-to-end automation. They want human in the loop, because if bots are doing everything, so what is the purpose of human there? So um, They want someone to govern the system. Kunal, you want to add something?
Yes. So we can, finally talk about this slide, I think,
Yeah.
where let's talk about the governance playbook, how you map the decision graph, the like defining data contracts, all that we have talked about previously.
Yes.
Gated pipelines, continuous mining, the data route and the audit trails. All of these are the part of what we call as the execution governance. But it's not just like, the governance moves downstream. BPM moves upstream, execution governance moves downstream into
Mm.
design and decision element. It becomes a place where organization, explicitly define the ownership of the decision, the policy interpretation, the exception behaviors, and the cross-system dependencies, I would say, before automation logs them in. And this allows risks to be identified when it is still, I would say, very cheap to address, during modeling, not during incidents. And this is not theoretical, I would say, but when the BPM governance execution organizations gain leverage, they can change behavior without rewriting the every automation, and they can align systems without slowing teams down. So in this execution governance model, BPM is not just a documentation; it's a controlled architecture.
Yes, so I would like to say like this slide summarizes execution governance in practice. So it map decisions, like it define contracts, it gate the changes, it monitor the conformance, and like it route failures deliberately, and it maintain audit trails as well. So I think we have summarized what we are talking about, like about the execution governance. By this playbook, like users can understand what they have to ask to the vendors, and how they can achieve automation, or their automation didn't fail in their organization. I would like to say here. Kunal, you have something on this?
Let's talk about the final slide.
Yeah.
What leaderships must demand, and it's basically the tagline is stop measuring only visibility, start measuring control. And how would you do that? So first point here is how your decision changes are validated. How is the conformance measure against the ROI? What is the rollback plan if the drift happens? So leadership must ask who owns decisions, how changes are validated, how drifts are detected, what rollback plan is. Because there are a lot of ways you can validate your decisions. You can explicitly model your decisions. You can, you can version control, you can addition authorize, and automation is no longer then becomes an operational concern. It is a governance challenge then. So when decision execute at a machine speed, decision designs become very strategic. So organizations that fail to recognize this will continue to be surprised by the system they believe they understand.
So I think I'll not speak much here. Like I'll summarize this in very few lines. And so when governance is treated as an engineering discipline, so then automation stop scaling fragility. So and start scaling predictable outcomes. So you will, like if you have execution governance in place, so you will receive or you will get the predictable outcome. So I think that's the shift beyond behind BPM in 2026. Like everyone should, like the BPM vendors and the end user should focus on moving just beyond the automation, because till 2025 we have done a lot of automation. So now it's important to move towards execution governance. So I think that's it. I'll hand it over to Anish.
Well, thank you, Kunal, and thank you, Pranjal, for taking us through today's session. The points on, let's say, the Gen AI, and as well as taking us through the risk that governance can solve, and was very insightful. And I'm sure the audience have a lot of questions for you guys. Well, to start with, our audience would want to know how to avoid the central bottleneck for any decision making.
Okay. Panel, should I take it?
Yeah, you can take it, Kunal.
So I would say, execution governance we were talking about for so long now. It's not a centralized execution. It's a centralized intent. So, decision can still be executed locally and asynchronously. What's centralized is ownership, versioning, and validation. Teams remain autonomous, but they operate against the shared contracts and the guardrail. And this is the same evolution. The software engineering went through APIs, CI/CD, and autonomy increased once the standards were explicit. That's how you can avoid creating a better like conditions.
Pranjal, you got anything to add on to that?
I think like Kunal had covered that thing, so nothing to add here.
So we'll just move on to the next question. So the so you guys discuss regarding the fact that we already have dashboards
Yeah.
and process mining isn't enough. That was a question raised from one of the audience.
Okay. So, like we are not saying ki like dashboard and process mining are not necessary. So they are important because without these tools and solutions, you will not get to know how your processes are operating. And without dashboards, you will not you how you visualize that thing. So that is why dashboards are also necessary. But like they are descriptive tools, so they tell you what happened and like help you explain the past outcome, because that all these things take the historical data, like the thing which has already happened, but they don't govern like the future behavior, like the predictive thing, like what will happen in the future. So what we are saying here is like execution governance addresses a different problem. So like it controls how decisions are designed and how they are aligned, and like how it changed before automation like executes them, and when then there is like a complex system, so it controls that. So what I can say, like it I'll give you an example, like if dashboards are your rear view mirror, so execution governance is your steering system, like in the car. So you need both, but like the confusing one for other is like how organization end up by surprised by the system. Like they have to believe like they have the real system, but they need someone to control that system. I would like to say here that. Uh, yeah, I
Yeah,
hope I answered that question.
thanks for answering that, Pranjal, and I hope there is a better clarity on the difference or the need for process mining and dashboards to our
Yes.
viewers as well. Well, there is another questions regarding what exactly is or how is execution governance different from just doing BPM better or process mining better, business process mining better.
Okay, so I would answer this. Doing BPM better still fails if BPM remains static and very downstream. The difference is that the execution governance moves BPM upstream into the decision design and development. And we have observed a lot of vendors doing this only. They are moving from downstream to upstream, from just a data ingestion to you to the entire decision intelligence platforms of it. So the market is moving. So BPM has to align itself to provide, or update itself as by being an decision, by being an execution governance. So it governs, it will allow you to govern assumptions, exceptions, logic, and policy interpretation before they are embedded into the automation system. And this is very important because traditional BPM documents flow and the execution governance allows you to control behavior as well. That's a distinct matter once automation becomes continuous in the machine speed. So this few things, moving from being static to dynamic, from moving downstream to upstream, and allowing the logic and the policy interpretation before embedded into the automation is what makes this execution governance better than the BPM.
Well, I hope that makes a better clarity to our viewers on that question. Well, last but not the least, I'll just ask one last question, which is from I think our viewers are a bit more curious to know what or how what do you actually start or where do you actually start execution governance in a large enterprise?
Kunal, should I take this?
Chopin.
Yeah. So, what would I like to say is like you don't have to start from everywhere. So you have to identify like where the risk are concentrated. So, like this involves like typically they are concentrated in on customer onboarding, financial flows, and compliance checkpoint or like the cross region processes. So you can pick one end-to-end journey, being it customer onboarding or anything else, and then map the decision point, not just a task, and then identify the same concept like the risk, eligibility, escalation, and how should it define multiple times. So that single exercise, like by doing this, you can usually expose enough misalignment to justify execution governance as a discipline. So you will get like you don't have to take the entire system. What I'm trying to say here, you just have to pick one process or take one system or one department and start identifying like the decision points there, and ultimately by doing small things you can achieve uh, execution governance across the organization.
Well, thank you so much, Pranjal, for answering that. And once again, thank you to both Pranjal and Kunal for sharing your insights today and walking us through your session or your discussion on the risk that is involved in business process mining. With that, thank you so much to all our audience who joined us once again from across the globe. And all those who missed today's video, the video is available on our website, and do follow us on LinkedIn to stay updated with our upcoming webinars on the topics or related to business process mining, as well as robotics and automation in this segment or in this market. With that, thank you, Pranjal, thank you, Kunal. Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining today's session.
Thank you, everyone.